Welcome to the Creative Soul Healing Podcast. Here we talk about the connection between creativity and healing, and how we are creative and how creativity helps us heal mentally, physically, and emotionally. Join us now. Hi everyone, Larissa Russell of Creative You Healing, and today I have with me Shanti Hershenson. Shanti's first novellas were published when she was in the 6th grade, although her writing journey started long before then. Ever since she could hold a pencil, marker, or crayon, she was creating stories. They started from pictures, scribbles, and eventually turned into captivating tales. So welcome, Shanti.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up where you are now?
Yes, I have to admit it's kind of a strange story, but I think I've always been fascinated with writing. I was always the kid who would read during recess, and I was always just creating these little stories. I think it even says that in my bio. However, when the pandemic hit, I was around 12 years old and I was really stuck at home. I was lonely. I was bored. I was just really upset and I was really sad. On one hand, I really didn't want to get sick, and on the other hand, I was restless at home. And even going around walks in the round neighborhood just really didn't do it. And I just longed for something more. But in that time when I was stuck at home, I also realized that I have nothing to do and I have things I really want to do that maybe I could do. So because of that, I ended up starting writing my first novel. It was called By Unlock. And I was about to say it's bad, but it's really not. And at the beginning, it was pretty rough. I'd never written a novel before. I'd had those 2 novellas that I'd written, but they were really kind of short and they weren't that good. And I really wanted to write something that was better and that was like me. Because also, those 2 novellas were written with a friend. I'd never written anything. I've written stuff on my own, but I'd never written the full big thing on my own. I really wanted to. So, around a few months later, the book was really, really, really long and it was really wordy. It was insane. It was 250,000 words and 800 pages over the span of about 6 months. So I had to actually end up splitting that book into 3 separate books. I have the first draft printed somewhere in this huge book. It's really fun. That book, I have to say, really bridged the way for all my other books because once I'd written one book, I was like, this is easy. I can write another one or another one. And then while I was editing that book and figuring out what I was going to do with the monstrosity of it, I ended up writing another book and then another book. So it's like everything I've kind of written started off with this one book by Unlock, and then it just gotten easier from there.
Wow. I've written a couple myself, and it's not easy for me. That's amazing that it is for you. How many books have you published now?
Right now, I have published 12 books, and my 13th book I just made the pre-order announcement for.
Wow. And that's just in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And you're 15?
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. That's so cool. And so one of the questions I ask all my guests is about healing with creativity. What does that mean to you, healing with creativity?
Yeah, so for me, I think a part of just everything, I've always used writing as an outlet for my emotions and an outlet for my feelings. I usually write when I'm upset and I want to escape, and I write when I really want to get something out or when I want to share something that I'm upset about. And in that way, writing is something that's very healing to me because it's kind of like therapy. Like you could just write and then you feel just a little better. I think that's how kind of I can heal through creativity. It's just always been something that I've used to kind of help me through things.
Yeah. Yeah. As a journaler myself, I journal a lot. I totally agree with you how important it is to express ourselves, whether that's in writing or paint or whatever it is for you, music. And to be able to express ourselves is so important, so important.
Yeah.
Once you wrote your first huge book and you broke it down into the trilogy, you realized for your own self how easy it was for you. When you're writing, are you basing it on your own life? Are you basing it on a fantasy? Can you tell us a little bit about
I
that?
think usually it depends on the book. There's some books with like particular scenes where I'm like, oh yeah, this is like kind of what happened to me. And then there are other books where I just completely made it up. So it really does depend on the book and the setting and like what's going on. So it's kind of like a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Usually though, it's just random stuff I came up with and then kind of developed.
Yeah. And the world gives us lots of random things to come up with. How long does it take you? I'm thinking it's very quick to write, let's say from rough draft to publishing. How long do you think that takes you?
It can be around 9-ish months, I'd say. I don't want to say to a year, maybe around 6 to 9 months. It takes around 2 to 3 months for the first draft. Then the thing is, I usually let that first draft sit aside for a bit. That kind of varies depending on how long I'm working on another project or how long I want to take a break from it. But if I count that time, it can be around anywhere from like a year to like even like only 1 month. And then after that, I'd say it takes around 2 to 3 months for editing, sometimes more. It's taken a really long time occasionally with some of these books. So it really depends, but it can range from like a couple months just to a year.
And you're often working on more than one project at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you must be able to
Yeah.
have so many books out in such a short amount of time. Did your parents foster this in you, your writing, or was that something that just came naturally to you?
I think it's more something that came naturally. My parents have always supported me as a writer. However, I think they were fairly surprised when I started writing my first book. One thing is, I never told anyone when I started writing it. I was like, I want to write a book. But I don't know why I was a little embarrassed by it. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is silly. I'm not telling anyone. And eventually I started telling them, and they were like very surprised because by that
Yeah.
point I was already like almost done with it.
Yeah. And I think that's very true for a lot of people. They feel like they're going to be judged for, oh, is it going to be good enough? Is it going to be all of those things? And really just do it. Just do it, right? You
Yeah,
can figure the rest of that out later. That's amazing. That's amazing. So in school, can I ask what grade you're in?
I'm a freshman.
Okay. And so in school, are you a bit of a celebrity for having all these books?
It not really. There are some people I've met that followed me on social media and didn't realize that I went to their school. And so some people have read my books. Another thing is I don't really tell people in person. I don't know what it is. Like I tell a lot of people online. I mean, my whole TikTok account, all my social medias are about my books. But whenever I'm in person, I get really nervous telling people to the point where sometimes my mom has to even tell people and be like, oh yeah, my daughter's an author. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. At school, I don't really talk about it very much. I'm trying to because I feel like that's something I should do. And I can get more people to read my books and I can get more people to come to my book signings. That's a really good way to market those kinds of events. However, right now I'm in my creative writing class and I'm in the writing club. And I think like maybe about like only like one or two of them know.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I'd be shouting it from the rooftops. And when you're in that writing mode, right? How long do you sit down for a while? Do you like schedule time? Do you just have to feel into it?
I write every single day. I write 1,000 words every single day. That's usually my goal. However, I do more than that. It's very often that I do less than that. I've just kind of gotten into the habit of doing at least 1,000 words. So back in like 2020, I'd say I had this very concrete schedule. Like I'd wake up at 11 and I'd write like around like maybe 500 words and then I'd write like the other 500 later. However, now my schedule's really shifted. I'd say like I wake up and I take a bit just to like relax. Sometimes I have things to do in the morning, other times I don't. But often I go out to breakfast and I usually write very little before I go to breakfast just because I don't like writing without eating. So sometimes I write nothing before I go to breakfast and sometimes I write a bit. And then when I get home, I'll start writing. And sometimes if I'm feeling it, I'll sit there and I'll just write until I'm done. Otherwise, I'll write in little increments. Or another thing I very often do is I will write a little, I'll sit there on my phone and just procrastinate and then I'll write a little more and then I'll go back to my phone. When I notice I'm doing this, however, I usually try to put my phone away or I get my headphones out and go downstairs and like put my phone away and then just listen to music on my computer because I like listening to music while I write, but sometimes if it's on my phone, it can be very distracting to have to change the song. So there's like little things. But I'd say I do have like this weird kind of schedule. And I mean, it's not really a schedule because it changes like daily, but I do have some uniform.
And you do make sure that you actually make time to write every day.
Yeah.
And so typically people talk about being so busy. So you're a freshman, you probably have homework, you probably have friends, school, and then you're writing. How do you keep up with all of that?
It can feel like a lot sometimes. Right now with school, I do have quite a bit of homework, but I've been able to keep up with it pretty well. I will say I have a cold, so I was absent the last 2 days. So figuring out what I've missed along with writing is going to be really fun. I should be able to do it. But currently with school, what I do is I write during homeroom first because it's around like 30 minutes where I can just write. And that can get me anywhere from like only like 100 words to 500 words, depending on how I'm feeling. Then either if I have time to write during class, I'll write a little more. Otherwise, I'll finish writing after school and I'll try to do like 30 minutes of homework, 30 minutes of writing. But very often that 30 minutes of writing can kind of fill in like everything like else I need to do regarding writing.
Mm-hmm. So you just make sure that you schedule the time for it and then you do it. You talk about the phone. The phone often gets in the way. I know, but procrastination is one of the things we use when we don't really feel like doing things. You talked about putting your phone away and doing that. So how do you get yourself back on track when you find yourself procrastinating with the phone?
Sometimes I just put it away instantly as soon as I figure out. Other times I almost have to like not argue with myself, but be like, okay, I can do one more thing and then you're gonna put it away. But that usually doesn't work. So as soon as I realize like, hey, I'm off track, first off I kind of scare myself and I'm like, okay, if you keep this up all day, you're not gonna write today. And then are you gonna do this tomorrow? It's kind of I'm mean to myself. Then I put my phone away. Either that or I like try to switch. Sometimes it's like I'm listening to music and I'm like, I want to hear this song, even though that song has like nothing to do with the book I'm writing. And then I'll start singing along, but then I'll be like, okay, how about we listen to this song? And the next song is a little more kind of like, it's still a song I like, but it's one that's like on my book playlist. And then when I'm listening to that, I feel like I kind of get my head back into writing. And then as I'm listening to it, I kind of start imagining the characters and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should go write. So I can almost like trick myself into wanting to write.
I love what you mentioned about a playlist. So you have a playlist for when you're writing?
Yeah, I have several.
And so are they different moods or how do you set up your playlists?
I have playlists. Some of them are just the entire book and like kind of the vibes of the book. It can work for like most scenes. Other playlists I have are for specific characters. I would use that when I had like a multi-character point of view in a book and the POVs were like so vastly different. That was very common. And then I have other ones that are like different moods and kind of settings or even like scenes. I have like an action scenes playlist. I think I have like a sad playlist. And then some are just not even books, just like plots. So I have a playlist and it's literally called Sad Depressing Romance where they all die. No comment on whether or not that's a book I've written or not. And that playlist was really, really helpful.
I love that. So you can get yourself into the mood of what you're writing.
Yeah.
I love that idea. So you're all these different creative outlets into one so that you end up with a book at the end. So for all of those listeners who say they don't have time or they don't, whatever it is, whatever excuse you're making to not write that book, you've written 13 of them in 3 years. I think people can find time to write one, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I want to thank you so much for being here today. We're going to make sure that we have your links so that people know all about your books and they can find them. Maybe before we go, can you tell us just, are they all in the same genre or are they different genres?
Books vary in genres. However, the majority of them are in the science fiction genre. I have 3 in a paranormal fantasy series, and then I have 2 books of poetry. However, I'd say my main genre is science fiction. That's just like my favorite genre. That's what I prefer to write. I am trying to move on to other genres and kind of expand, like even to some subcategories of science fiction. However, those books aren't out yet. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's amazing. Any final thoughts before we go today?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to share this and let people know all about your books. I think it's amazing what you've done. And I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
To our listeners, we will see you again next time. And in the meantime, I wish for you amazingly creative days.
Calling all adventurous women. Have you been feeling lost and disconnected from your feminine energy? Are you seeking inner peace, clarity, and intuition? Then it's time to awaken your feminine energy and explore the power of reflection. Join us on a journey of self-discovery and uncover the beauty of your inner self. Awaken your feminine energy and connect with your creativity, intuition, and soul.
Thank you for listening. If you found our podcast of interest, we'd love for you to leave a review wherever you listen in.